evening and welcome to another edition of Doctor and Call. And it's a pleasure as always. We welcome you, our viewers on GBN television and our listeners on K105 FM. Also, our friends on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Tonight we continue our discussion on diabetes. And over the past 2 weeks we had a number of guests, speaking on different areas as it relates to this condition. Of course, November, Diabetes Awareness Month, and so we continue the discussion because it is very important that we understand, and we continue to reiterate the dangers of this condition, especially when it is not controlled. So it is important that you get as much information as you can, how to deal with it if you are diabetic, and of course, if you're not, how to prevent yourself from, becoming diabetic. All right. Dr. Nixon is with me as always, and tonight we have a very special guest, not a stranger to the program. In fact, I'll tell you, every year for the past, I would say 2 years, when it's Diabetes Awareness Month, of course, he emerges, and for very good reason, yes? And of course, it's always a pleasure to have him with us, Dr. Dwight Matthias, and we will be chatting with him in just a moment. So, get ready, folks. Call a friend, let them know that we have a very important program on this evening. We continue our discussion on diabetes, and of course, they should tune in. So, first, let's welcome Dr. Nixon. Doc, good evening, and welcome back. I think you're muted.
Oh,
all right,
sorry.
There we go. No, I got you now. Right.
I think you're getting old and deaf, but that's okay.
Maybe.
Welcome back from where I'm always here, Godfrey. Just muted sometimes. Good evening, Grenada. We're thankful for the wonderful rain. More rain, more vegetables. I've heard people complaining that we don't have vegetables in the market. I was talking to somebody with diabetes who's just really willing to change their how they eat. Mm-hmm. I can't find what I'm gonna eat.
Doc. It's interesting because tomorrow evening on our climate change program, we're looking at agricultural interventions, in the sector to help mitigate and, of course, against the whole issue of climate change. And productivity is an area that is seriously affected when it comes to that. So
that's one of the things you need to talk about: food security when you speak about climate change and health, and we often forget to mention food security and the fact that we still rely on a lot of imports. But when everywhere else have a little cold, we get pneumonia. So we need to start planning for our pneumonia and making sure that there's food. We have to get accustomed to planting something. I say if you could put a car in your yard, you could plant 3 beds or something. Okay, 6.
Yes.
No, seriously.
Yes, indeed.
So this is the last week really in Diabetes Awareness Month, but this is just the beginning of us taking stock and really getting our act together to bring on the numbers. Dr. Matthias will talk the numbers of people. I saw the 13.1 of population. There are populations in our region that already have 20% of the population, a prevalence, right, with people that that are sick with diabetes. That's not a good trend. As obesity increases, as our food choices become worse, as exercise gets less because we all have cars and we all have handheld devices. There are other things that other people have that I will not mention here, not good things, so I won't mention them, but we still have the ability to go and walk and go to the park, go to the beach, and enjoy a lot of free forms of exercise and recreation and stress management.
Yes, yes, indeed.
And there's still access to medications. Not all that's out there, but there is access to medication. And there are still ways of preventing. So we're going to talk about stuff tonight, but again, I want to welcome my colleague who I saw last week, and it was really good seeing you, Dr. Matthias, last week. I know you came and work your tail off and then take tail off to the States.
Run up again.
Yes. I really pray that you'll get a day when you come back, whichever time, to just don't do anything, although that might drive you crazy. But thank you for being here last week and for all the service you continue to give. I really am grateful. One of these days you'll get your order of Grenada, I promise you.
Yes. So it's a pleasure as always to welcome Dr. Matthias. Dr. Matthias, welcome back to Doctor and Call. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for the invitation, and it's always a pleasure wherever I can talk about, having the platform to talk about diabetes. I will make myself available because I'm passionate about this condition, and I know that with the advent of many new treatment regimens out there, and as the research gives us more information how to approach diabetes care, once I have that understanding and as I practice it daily in my clinics, I would like to share it to my people at home in Grenada as much as I can. So again, thank you, and to the audience.
Yes, indeed. It's always a pleasure. Tonight, I want to focus a lot on diabetes management, because I think that's one of the weaknesses with our people. And I'm talking here about people who are diabetic. Managing the condition, it's really challenging, I think, for them for many reasons. And maybe we can look at some of them and probably offer advice and possible solutions as to how to do that. So I would allow Dr. Nixon to bowl the first ball at you, and I would remain behind the wicket. I'm the wicket keeper, so I'll catch the balls that pass, if any passes at all. So Dr. Nixon, go ahead.
I only know how to stone, okay? I don't play windball.
I am sure Dr. Matthias can bat well.
I
know. The GBS, they can bat well. Anyway, so, on a very serious note, we talk about management, and I imagine the first thing that gets to everybody's mind is what medications I take, what I eat, what I don't eat. Am I going to get insulin? What kind of insulin? How do I manage? How do I control? But I think we need to go a little further back, because we usually talk about disease and we don't talk about disease prevention. So I hope tonight we can look at that a little, since we know what predisposes us, what makes us likely to have diabetes. We know why we get diabetes. We don't catch it, why we develop diabetes. What is it? We kind of touched a little on that last week. But I think the management of diabetes starts with its prevention. And I'm sure Dr. Matthias has a lot he has to say. And then we can look at what is you diagnose, and so what? What are the services you need to engage? Okay? Do you see the eye doctor or not? Do you see a dentist or not? Do you see the podiatrist or not? Do you see a diabetologist if one is available or not? Just what are the things you're going to use so at least you can have some good quality of life? And then we could look at the medications, probably not in detail, but what are the options? There are a lot of options that are, some of which are not even available to us. And then we look at how we prevent complications, because that is what we most want, which is a very painful part. So after you suffered for the first 5 years, and Lord have sugar, you don't do anything about it. So you suffer those 5 years, and then things start to go bad. My circulation, Lord, my foot hurt me, Lord, my eyes, Lord, right? But how do we get what do we do before the Lord stage? Right? And then when we get to the Lord stage, what do you do before the last and final thing? How do you need to engage? What support there is? Because there is support. Or how do you make yourself available to those support systems? How do you not be in denial about what diabetes is? So that's the kind of path I want us to take. Recognizing, yes, there are complications, yes, but how do I first avoid getting diabetes, even if everybody else in my family has? And if I do, what do I do?
Yeah.
Well, you threw a lot at me here, so there's lots of fastball coming up to me, right? So
you can't
first, I think for the month of November, diabetes has been defined. So I will not go in detail to define why we are talking about elevated blood sugars. Diabetes is elevated blood sugars as a result of destruction or dysfunction of the cells that makes insulin. The cells that makes insulin is called beta cell, and it resides in the pancreas. So diabetes is elevated blood sugar, and the term we use is hyperglycemia as a result of beta cell dysfunction. When blood sugars are elevated, it creates a condition called glucose toxicity. That is too much glucose in the bloodstream, and as a result of that, that creates inflammatory changes or a change in the structure of the integrity or the structure of blood vessels, etc. And that's what caused the complications. That high levels of glucose weakens the structure or the infrastructure, the road map of our body, thus leading to complication. So we want to prevent those complications in long term. And those complications we are talking about is the complications of the eyes, which we call retinopathy, the complication of the kidney, which we call nephropathy, the complication of the nervous system, which we call neuropathy. And they are more focused on small vessels. And then we have complication of large vessels, where we have the stroke, the amputation, and the heart attack. So the management of diabetes is focused on preventing both the small vessels complication I mentioned prior and the large vessels complication. Dr. Nixon just mentioned prevention. Prevention is also a management because we do not want you to become diabetic. So that is a management. How can we prevent you from becoming a diabetic or towards the trajectory of diabetes? So normal individuals can transition to pre-diabetics and then eventually evolve into diabetes. Now, why are we seeing the increase of diabetes globally? You know, you look at data, it can go from 450 million to 700 million folks with diabetes today. If we look at our lifestyle, we are not as active as we once were. We are more sedentary. We use, as was mentioned, we use the motor vehicles, the bicycles, etc., and that leads to increased weight. Increased weight creates added pressure on the insulin production in our body, and that will have a ripple effect in becoming diabetics. So in a way, our lifestyle changes throughout the years. Our lifestyle changes, I'm referring to decrease physical activity and increase in our appetite with high caloric foods. High caloric foods, I'm referring to glucose, carbohydrates, etc., as we increase our intake and not burn it out. Because obviously the majority of us have a caloric, not a caloric deficient, a caloric over deficient, Mm-hmm. We consume a lot and we don't burn it. And as a result of that, that can have an inflammatory process within our body leading to the beta cells dysfunction. I use the term beta cell destruction initially, and beta cell destruction, I'm referring to a total alienation of the beta cells, and that can lead to type 1 diabetics. But I know the great majority of folks with diabetes today, 90% of our diabetic patients have type 2 diabetes, and about 10%, 5 to 10%, has type 1 diabetes. So that's just to distinguish the destruction of the beta cell. As I said earlier, there's a quiz coming, folks. The destruction of the beta cells lead majority of the times to type 1, and dysfunction of the beta cell leads to type 2 diabetes. I hope that's an introduction to where our conversation will go, mm-hmm. and we'll stop at that point.
Definitely. Doc, I just want to, just a little clarification on something. You mentioned about the weight, the excess weight interfering with the cell's ability to function effectively. Can you just go a little bit more, just explain a little bit more on that for us? How does it, that relationship or what happens there?
Now, we are getting at a cellular level now. We are talking about the term insulin resistance. Your body produces certain amount of insulin based on the glucose content of the body that is exposed to. As you increase sugar responds in the body is for the pancreas to release insulin. So whenever the body is exposed to glucose, the body responds, the pancreas responds by releasing insulin to keep that glucose in check. Now, I will mention that glucose in the body comes from two sources: what you eat and what the liver makes. Let me say that again. Sugar within our body, or glucose within our body, comes from two sources: what you eat and what the liver makes. Whenever sugar rises above that threshold, let's give it a number. Let's say 99. Let's say once sugar reaches above that threshold, your pancreas works by releasing insulin to bring that high levels back to normal. And that insulin that is released tells the liver, stop producing sugar. We have too much in the bloodstream. And the insulin also takes that excess sugar in the bloodstream and send it to fat cells and muscles for storage. And then the fat cells, our reservoir, in other words, is becoming bigger and bigger, and the insulin has to work upon that to keep it in check. So now our insulin is working 24 hours a day. Instead of having the on-off switch, it has to store all the sugar that is exposed to, because of our intake of high caloric foods, of high carbs, of high starch. Our pancreas is working 24 hours a day to keep in check. Come on, you'll be exhausted if you work 24 hours a day. And that's what happened to the pancreas. It said, I can't keep up anymore because I have to store all that sugar into the fat cells. And it comes a point that instead of it working 100%, it's now working 50%. And do you know, when you reach 50% working, approximate 50% working, diabetes, uncontrolled diabetes. So 50% loss of your pancreatic function leads to uncontrolled blood sugars, and you are diagnosed with diabetes.
Dr. Nixon?
I have a question,
If it's not well controlled, you lose 2 to 5% every year.
Of your pancreas? Of
the insulin production. Yes, correct, yes.
So hear me now. So, my father, Godfrey, my grandmother, Miss Mary, my uncle, Tom, Dick, and Harry, right? 3 of my cousins all have had diabetes. Okay? I know. There's some of my aunties, some of my half aunties, if you understand what I mean, have diabetes. What would you tell me as a 25-year-old? What advice would you give me so that I don't end up like these of the other generation?
I would like you to tell me first if Tom, Dick, and Harry, and Auntie and Uncle, Mary, if they had any complications.
Well, I don't know. Well, Uncle Dick have one foot. Auntie Mary, she claims that when she walks and I get in dim and all of those kind of things.
Okay, so as I approach this 25-year-old individual, I will say, based on your family history, your risk of becoming diabetic is 2 to 4 times. It's in your genes. The question is, when is it going to be expressed? I will say to that individual, number 1, lifestyle change is paramount to you. And when I mention lifestyle change, increase physical activity and decrease your carbohydrate intake, your sugar intake, your portion of the vegetables. Let's say, for example, yam. I know it's healthy, but you may not be able to handle it. the breadfruit.
But I prefer dumpling.
Yes, and dumpling, yes, exactly. In other words, decrease your carb intake. Because remember, as I said earlier, as you increase your carb intake, your pancreas have to work twice as hard. Remember that. Carbs are broken down into sugar. Once sugar levels goes up, the pancreas has to make insulin. So I'll be telling her to decrease her carb intake, increase her physical activity, because the risk of becoming diabetic is very high in her case. And if we change our lifestyle, and studies have shown, and I've shared with my colleagues on the island last week, studies have shown just by 10% of weight loss, or just by lifestyle change, you can prevent or reverse the onset of diabetes. It's there, just lifestyle change. So I will say to this individual, well, I want to prevent you from gestational diabetes, because you have a risk of that also. That is diabetes in pregnancy. I want to prevent the small vessel disease, you becoming blind or lost of vision as you get mid-age. I want to prevent the amputation starting from the toes, and you have to be vivid. No sugarcoating things anymore. You have to say you're going to lose the toes, then half of the foot, then remove the ankle, and we will chop all the way up as we can, because you have a risk of diabetes and its complication. You see, what I have recognized is that once we have this transparency and this honesty with our patient, they take heed. And that's what I personally have learned speaking to my colleagues on the island who has diabetes. They challenge me, and I even challenge them, because one of the mantra I use, I answer their questions. And if they don't have questions, I question them. And we agree to have a treatment regimen to improve the outcome. And I've seen that with my experience of being home twice a year for the several years.
So what would you say then? So I want to do a little pun here, because you talk about you can't sugarcoat everything. Well, already in diabetes, all your red blood cells are sugar-coated, so you're not sugarcoating anything else. Okay? But seriously, so we talk about management in general. Can you give us a kind of candid view of what is the status on diabetes management from a patient standpoint and from a health services? And I'm talking about public and private health services. What is your experience in the last week of being in Grenada?
All right. But first, let me address patient management. Patient needs to be empowered about this condition and what the objectives are. They have to. It's not we just saying, take this, because I recognize that there are many failure of medication because patient was not instructed on how to take the medication. Let's go for a common medication on our island, metformin, glucophage. Glucophage is an effective medication. It works at the liver. It instructs the liver to stop producing glucose, and as a result of that, glucose levels will be decreased. But if you take metformin on an empty stomach, first pill in the morning, you are rushing, I got to take my medication, you're going to get some nausea, vomiting, or even diarrhea. So patient's going to say, that's not a medication for me, because they've just been take it in the morning, but not knowing you should take it with some food.
With your food. Mm-hmm.
All right? So if you do not eat breakfast, but you eat lunch, take it with lunch. We said twice a day with breakfast and dinner, but this patient is hustling to work. They pop it in. They'll be in the bathroom for the whole day. So here again, instruct patients how to take medication. Case in point, we have another medication on the island called diamicron. Diamicron lowers blood sugar. If you don't eat, your sugars will drop. You in the field plowing and cutting and trimming and everything, you are so busy you forget to eat. You have that symptom. And then the patient will say, I'm not going to take this anymore. This thing makes me feel funny. Again, instructing the patient that if you take this dose of diamicron, it's very important that you follow an eating pattern. And many of them may stop taking the medication, and they return with a higher marker for the blood sugars. So instructions are very important. And this is just saying 2 of the medication that is prescribed home that can have some adverse event. And that's a management where we physicians have to empower the patient when, how, and why, or even instruct them how the medication works. You will see the benefits there. I will draw reference to you. A patient was prescribed an insulin. This patient is in her mid-60s. She had a stroke, and she was, when I saw her, she couldn't articulate as the way she should. She was given insulin, and her son gave her the insulin. 30 units twice daily, with breakfast and with dinner. During my questioning, I asked, do you eat food for 30 units of insulin in the morning? And do you eat the same food for 30 units of insulin in the evening? I asked that question because you and I do not eat the same thing every day, and the portion and what we eat is always different. So why doesn't our dose of insulin varies depending on what you're eating?
And when?
You're okay. So the son was giving her this shot of insulin. And during the day, she was having these sweating spells, feeling very ill. And he said, well, I was told just to give her the insulin. And the patient was saying, I told you I was feeling bad, but he didn't know, but he was still giving her the shot. So through our conversation, I was able to share with him what was happening. She was having low blood sugars because her eating, her portion size were lower compared to how much insulin she's taking. So I asked the question further. Do you think, what should you do in this case? He said, well, I'll give mother more to eat. Then I asked mom, aren't you eating enough? She said, yes, I don't want any more food. So I said to him, so what should you do? She's having low blood sugars. So I had to tell him, rather than give her more, something added to eat, decrease the dose of insulin. So those are the sort of things that, it's more education. It's more education. And it's work, don't get me wrong. So these are some of the obstacles we are experiencing. That's the patient end in terms of management. Now, one of the points that I have highlighted is that we physicians probably not aggressive enough to get to goal. In other words, there's a lethargy in us. Oh, they will always do that. Let's prescribe that. And we have to change that way in prescribing. We have to get to goal quickly because the longer the patient is exposed to high levels of blood sugar, the complication develops. So following up and continuity of care. When a patient leaves your office, give them an appointment for 3 months or 4 months or 2 weeks. Let them know they have to return to evaluate how the regimen that is prescribed, how it's optimizing or improving their blood sugars.
Doc, I have there's someone on who sent a question. And I think it's important that we take it because the information here, let me just go with it. Good night. I would like to know a little more as I was recently diagnosed with diabetes. My lab was abnormal at 6.9. Is this type 1 or type 2 diabetes? I ask because the complaint does not run in my family. For the past 2 months, I've suffered with diabetic neuropathy, which is quite painful, and I was placed on meds for diabetes, for high blood pressure, and neuropathy. Do I take all the medication together with food? I would like to know how bad I am. I really want to do all in my powers to reverse this condition. What can you recommend?
Well, to that patient, I will say kudos to you. You can improve this because based on the data you just shared with me, her A1C is 6.9. So I know she still have beta cell function. And the audience, I asked you that question, what does beta cell produce? Because that was answered earlier, okay? So this patient A1C, which is an average blood sugar in the percentage form, all right? So your average blood sugar over 3 months given in a percentage. So that's the A1C. And the goal for an A1C who is diabetic should be less than 6.5. Here you have someone who is 6.9. That person's average blood sugar is running 150s, 160s, 170s range. So here again, with this individual who has neuropathy, which is a problem with the nerves, it's very painful. It could be, it's just a horrible experience. I know this person experienced, but we know even in the pre-diabetic phase, patients who are not diabetic, 10 to 15% of these patients could already have complications of diabetes neuropathy. So that's why prevention is very important. Even though you're pre-diabetic, you still have a risk of developing complication of diabetes. Right? So here you have someone who is 6.9. I will say to that individual, basically, there are things blood work that can be done to distinguish if that individual is a type 1, type 2. Now, we have learned in the past that a type 1, very early in childhood, we call it juvenile diabetes, and then usually we have the adult, which is type 2. Now, that is very muddy. Type 1s look like type 2s, type 2s look like type 1s in terms of the physical presentation. Yeah, it's very difficult today. But that individual, the person's question, I will say to them, speak to the physician and they can do blood work to distinguish whether or not that individual has type 1, type 2, because you can check the insulin reserve via blood tests and that may help. Now, what I will say to that person is you need to know your numbers. You need to know your numbers. What is my blood sugar before I eat? What is my blood sugar 2 hours after I eat? You know your A1C already. That's great. So if before you eat, your blood sugars are in an optimal range. Let's give an optimal range, 70 to 110. Yes, 70 to 110. 2 hours after you eat, you have to be back where you started. And we usually say less than 140. So this individual, whenever they have a meal, 2 hours after eating, if it remains 250, 300, you know she's eating the wrong thing. So here again, lifestyle change. Only how you can make lifestyle change, you got to know your data. You got to know your numbers. So checking blood sugars are very important in the care of diabetes. So this individual, I recommend lifestyle change, monitoring their blood sugars, being within the optimal range, understand foods. I am going to tell this patient, eat what you want to eat. Yes, I did say that. But 2 hours after you eat, check your blood sugars.
Let me just ask this quickly, Dr. Matthias. The beta cells that you mentioned, I know that there are some cells in the body that can, regenerate, and can that happen with beta cells?
Yes, it can. In other words, as you decrease your carb intake, in other words, you put the cells on a sabbatical. They're not working as hard as they should. So they could reprogram. When you go on a vacation, you take a rest, you come back fresh. That's the same kind of concept here. So here the cells were exposed to high sugar constantly, working over and over and over. They need a break. And that break is to decrease your carb intake, increase your physical activity, put the cells on a sabbatical, and you're going to see what happens.
So actually, someone can actually reverse this.
I like the word remission.
Okay.
And what's the difference? No, I want you to. Can you just explain? Because I think people have a right to understand the difference between reversal and remission in this context.
I think
because
so.
People have been given misgiven ideas and thoughts that are not real. So if you say, I've reversed my diabetes, I don't have diabetes, I'm being cured. I like remission. Can you please just explain what is the difference?
The whole idea is that I use the word remission, saying that due to your lifestyle change, just by decreasing carb, increased physical activity, you have prevented the progression of
the manifestation and the progress.
Yes. Right. Reversal means no matter, I can do whatever I can after that.
And gone back to girl stage.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
So in the context of Grenada, I want you to speak a little on food and what we eat, volume and stuff, just a little. But I want you to speak. Remember, I'm 25 years old and I'm asking these questions, right? I know I'm on a mission to empty the vat at Westerhall Rums. So I want you to tell me, I want you to speak to all of us because we see it. I was standing in town today with a gentleman. I was with a friend of mine, one of my friends, and he says, "Look at this man. Oh my God, his diabetes have him like this." So I said, "Does he drink it?" "Oh yeah." So I want you to speak to alcohol, especially from our young people, and how it puts us at risk. Because alcohol is just to most of us, alcohol is just a drink that we use for entertainment purposes to feel nice. I think people forget what alcohol is made from and why our access and our overconsumption of alcohol can be so detrimental. 1, to development of diabetes, 2, to the poor control of diabetes, and 3, to the worsening and complication of diabetes as an entity.
Well, at first, we should really address the issue of alcoholism if it's prevalent within our society in Grenada. And if that's the case, we have to talk about addiction. And that addiction itself can lead to both social issues and also physical issues, or even our productivity. So addressing that on one end. But as tonight we are talking about diabetes, alcohol is a sugar in its own right. And that is cleared at the liver, and that can lead to fibrosis of the liver. And in terms, remember, our liver plays a very important role in storage and genesis of glucose. And with alcohol issues, you certainly will disrupt this factory, which I call the liver, leading to poor control of diabetes, and leading also to even the complications of liver cirrhosis. So, and listen, the proof of our alcohol, can you give me some numbers? I will drink a glass of wine. A glass of wine will have 12% alcohol in it.
A regular beer is 4. I saw Carib launched something in a blue bottle. Have you seen that Carib blue, Godfrey? That is 6%.
Okay.
And there's some rum that can go on plain.
Well, Doc, I'll tell you, the kind of rum we drink in Grenada, we're talking between 65 and 75%.
And 70%. Yeah.
But let's think about that, the alcohol content of that. As you put that in your mouth, it changed the lining of our esophagus.
Your tongue.
The tongue all the way down. And that can, through time, there's a term we call metaplasia, and changing from one cell to a different to accommodate the toxicity. And that in turn, remember, it travels all the way down. So that in turn destroy those normal cells within our mouth, our esophagus, into our stomach. And that can cause changes, and I think that is a discussion that needs for the future to look at the consequences of consuming excess alcohol and the effect it has on our public as large. Because as a kid growing up, rum shop, in every corner. And we can all talk about within our villages, we always know who the alcoholic was or the one who suffered from alcoholism. Look at their lifestyle where they are today and look at the productivity. But besides that, in terms of diabetes, it interferes with the optimal blood glucose control. So those individuals who consume excess alcohol, that may lead to poorly controlled diabetes, the onset of diabetes, etc. And we have difficulty there.
Yeah, lest we forget as well that alcohol made from sugar.
You got that right.
Yeah. So consuming alcohol, we tend to forget our calories. I haven't seen light beer here, unless you're probably drinking something like Corona, which has probably a little less alcohol content than what we have. Most of our alcoholic products, whether it's alcohol, pure alcohol, like hard liquor, like rum and whiskey, and the other ones like that, or we're talking about alcoholic beverages, do have a high content, 4% but it's just sugar. People forget that alcohol is made from sugar, and that is the challenge that we have in Grenada. I wanted to make another point, Doctor. I wanted to substantiate a point you made about alcohol consumption and the need for rehabilitation, especially since there's so many people, and this is just from what I see empirically. I see so many people who have diabetes, and we know that a lot of people who lose their legs, especially on male, are also consumers of alcohol, right? And the fact that it's very difficult to just come off alcohol like that. As explained to a young person today, getting off alcohol, you need a proper detox facility. I've spoken to the guys, I want to say young men because they're my contemporaries, but we're not so young anymore. But I remember one guy in particular, extremely talented artisan, very, very talented. I said, boy, you need to stop drink. He said, boy, sons, I really want to stop, but every time I stop, I get DTs or I get a seizure, right? So we must understand that we have to have proper facilities to assist our patients as part of the management of diabetes, especially, and management, whether it's preventing, whether we're trying to control, just getting people off alcohol. Alcohol is severely addictive, we know that. Also, in a place where you have a good alcohol management program, you have 75% of your patients, of the participants in alcohol, like Alcoholics Anonymous, those supports Alcoholics Anonymous in particular, 75% of people will remain in remission for life. So that means that 75 and 100 alcoholics who seek support, right? Who seek support with alcohol control, getting off alcohol, up to 75% will never drink again.
Well, I could attest to that because during my internship residency, we had to do an 8 weeks program within Alcohol Anonymous or a detox center and live and be amongst individuals who were in that. And it was an eye-opening experience sitting in the midst of those folks as they share their stories and their struggles, etc., that occur. But again, as I said, it's a serious problem that needs to be addressed, talked about, and and programs need to be established to help individuals with that problem. I echo your sentiments.
Right. Doc, I have a question. As it relates to diabetes, is it gender neutral, or one gender is a little more prone to diabetes than the other?
Well, I must say, diabetes have no friends.
Right.
Diabetes will go after everyone, but we see a higher incidence in the females than the male. Whatever the reason for that, it's a slight increase, but whatever the reason for that, I haven't got a satisfactory answer. If it's related to the hormonal, or let's say, for example, this may be a biased statement. So guys, don't send texts and emails to the station saying this is what Dr. Messiah says.
I've read somewhere where women are a little more predisposed because of the body weight, the less muscles, so they burn less energy and all the rest of that. Right.
Because of the decreased activity compared to men who do more strenuous work, so they could burn the carbs.
And who have bigger muscle mass, so they can burn faster.
Yes, that's a possibility.
Right. Yeah. Also, someone is asking, does itching eyes have anything to do with diabetes?
Well, here again, if the eyes is itching, whenever I hear the word itching eyes, you have to define that for me. Is it the eyelids, or what is? Hopefully, that person will go with that. Now, if the eyes are itching, does that person have dry eyes? Does that person have decreased tear flow within the eyes? If it's on the eyelids itself, but just the facial expression, you could think about hyperglycemia. High blood sugars can cause itching of the body.
Of the skin.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So, Doc, I tell you what. Let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll open the telephone lines again, and listen to our callers. If they have any questions, we'll take them, and as we continue our discussion. So, stay with us, folks. We'll be back with you in just a moment.
Blast Gaming is where dreams come true and jackpots are won. Dive into a world of delightful experiences and daring action. From the moment you step through the doors, have the time of your life, feel the energy, soak in the excitement, and let the good times roll. Blast is more than just a place to play. It's where friends socialize, cocktails flow, and a safe space for those who dream big and dare to have fun while doing it. Blast Gaming. Know your limits, play within it. You must be 18 and over.
You heard about the new Softweave bathroom tissue with total hygiene? As hygiene and safety have taken center stage, our bathroom tissue is now manufactured with 3 different technologies to offer the best protection for you and your family. UVC light technology for a safe and effective disinfection process, eliminating 99.9% of microorganisms. Also, production at high temperatures, killing all types of germs and bacteria. And it's pH controlled with delicate fibers to prevent irritation for even sensitive skin. Softweave Total Hygiene Bathroom Tissue. Available in supermarkets and shops island-wide. Visit Softweave Caribbean Facebook or Instagram pages for more information.
If there was ever a time to keep and stay healthy, it's now! We at Hills and Valley are here to help you take deliberate steps to maintain your health. We stayed true to maintaining the most comprehensive rates while stocking the widest range of medicines and health devices, including personal protective equipment. There are so many benefits shopping with us. You get great savings through discounts for senior citizens and reward cards for loyal customers. Ask about owning yours today. Visit us at Halifax and Grenville Street, St. George, Jubilee Street opposite the Grenville Bus Terminal, and at Hillsborough, Carrico. Our wholesale distribution on Halifax Street also stocks the widest range of pharmaceuticals. We are with you on the hills and in the valleys. We are Hills and Valley Pharmacy.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Doctor and Call, and our very special guest this evening, Dr. Dwight Matthias. And of course, we're chatting about diabetes and the importance of having information and understanding what you need to do. So our telephone line is now open. The number is 435-2041. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask, you can do so now. The number again, 435-2041. You can also post your question on our Facebook page or on our WhatsApp platform, which is the same number, 435-2041. Doc, we have a caller on the line, so let's go to the telephone. Doctor and Call, good evening. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, good evening,
good
caller.
Good evening, good night to the panel.
Yes, good evening. So, caller, you need to turn the volume of your radio or your TV down.
Yes, I just tried to do that.
Okay, yes. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Excellent program. Good night to my colleague, my classmate, and my very good doctor friend. So, I have a question. I know tonight is about diabetes, but I want to ask a question as it relates to the intake of sugar and hypertension.
I think I can use my intuition here and my classmate. I acknowledge you. I know the voice, but I would not say the name. And before I answer your question, I did stop by, and you were not in office. Okay? So I
got the message. I plan to call you tonight.
All right. Thanks for the question. There is strong correlation between sugar and hypertension, and that stems from the core defect, insulin resistance. When we talked initially, we talked about increased weight, etc., and increased weight creates an inflammation that interferes with the integrity of the endothelium of cells. This is more on the cellular level. So there is a strong correlation between diabetes, hypertension, and high cholesterol, right? We do see that linked together. And as we usually see in diabetic patients, hypertension. And eventually we'll see patients with hypertension may have diabetes. And then we may see high cholesterol in these patients. It's a threesome that always travel together. So I always tell folks in our clinic, once you have high blood, let's say, for example, high blood sugar, we will at least give a low dose of a medication that will protect them with their kidney function. And that medication also has a lowering of blood pressure in those individuals. So in all diabetic patients, even though they may not have high blood pressure, hypertension, we do treat them with a low dose of a class of medication called ARB, angiotensin receptor blockers, losartan, or we may use ACE, angiotensin ACE inhibitors, So here again, converted enzyme inhibitors. So we do, and we are aware of those conditions occurring together. And it's a precaution because we know it can occur. And thanks for that. That's a very important question.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much, Doc. Thank you so much.
Thank you, caller. Thank you very much indeed. All right, the number again, 435-2041. That's the number you can call. And of course, we'll be more than happy to accommodate your question or your comment. Dr. Nixon, any other questions you'd like to?
Oh, I have a lot of questions. Dr. Matthias, know that I have enough questions. I wanted to talk tonight about those partners that we need. So again, I'm 35 and I just come to your office, and I'm glad in Grenada this week, so I come to see you because I don't like how I've been feeling. I went to my GP and he says, boy, your sugar's been not so good, right? And I come to you, or let's say you are my GP. Tell me, who are the partners that somebody with diabetes, and remember, like you were just telling your friend, most people by extension with diabetes tend to have hypertension anyway, right? Tell me who are the partners you will advise me to engage with. Right? Because a lot of us have to walk through that trip. It's a big bundle of us have to take care of the diabetes. Who are these people that I should develop a relationship to help to control? What's that word again? That reword. Remit. Send it back to as good as possible and control and prolong my life, because we also know of the shortening of your life because of all this attack. These toxins that run through your body and start bashing up everything, like a river coming down and start to break up all the conduits, all the pipes break, because you just have all kind of craziness going in your vessels. Tell me, who are my friends? Who are the group of friends, professionals that I should be hanging with?
You know, before I answer your question, you made a statement, shortening of life. And there are many studies out there that shows that if you have diabetes that is not well controlled, you may lose 6.2 years of your life expectancy. Just having diabetes, right? And if you have diabetes with a stroke, you lose 12% of your life expectancy. I just considering your life already bad. All right, so I just want to put that point out there. So I am your GP, and you come to me and you're concerned about diabetes, and we did blood tests and we proved that you are diabetic. And now I will say to you, all right, diabetes is a continuum if it's not well controlled. So first, let's evaluate your nutrition. So I will have consultation. I will write a consultation to you to see the nutritionist, to reevaluate your eating habits, your portion of food, the kind of food you're eating. I will also send you to a diabetic educator to empower you so the basic questions can be answered. Diabetes education and a nutrition consultation is first on my list. Thirdly, I will say to you, all right, I need to get a baseline of what your eyes are doing. So you will see an ophthalmologist who will look at your retina to see if the blood sugars already create problems in the small vessels that may progress if you are not adequately controlled. Doc, I'm having some tingling in my lower extremities. I may do some screening tests in my clinic, but then you may have to see the podiatrist, because diabetes affect in the lower extremities start distally and it goes proximally. That is the toes to the feet, to the ankle, to the leg, and up. So you will see a podiatrist to give a thorough evaluation of your lower extremities. And these are some of the concerns that we may have. Now, another individual, if there is family history of heart disease and you present and you say, Doc, my exercise tolerance has decreased. I cannot climb up Market Hill as I used to before. Whenever I'm going up to the hospital to visit my friends, I get shortness of breath. I have to rest because my chest is tight. You will be sent to the cardiologist to evaluate for heart disease. Doc, I have some weakness. I can't hold on to things as I used to. I find myself drifting whenever I'm walking. Here again, did that individual have a stroke or evolving? They may see a neurologist to help manage that. So there is a whole village of consultation that a diabetic patient may warrant to if they present, or in other words, to prevent the worsening of condition. Remember, initially in our talk, I mentioned about what are we trying to manage? What are we preventing? We are trying to prevent the complications. So you would have to see all these specialists. But up front, on the forefront, a nutritionist, diabetes education, because we have to empower. Why? You know what diabetes is. So as a result of that, you are empowered. You see the nutritionist who will help you decrease the workload. The workload I'm referring to is your carbohydrate intake, your sugar intake. He or she will do a good job. And I must give a shout out to Ms. Brown because I know she does an awesome job. right? So they will be able to help with the management here. So these are some of the folks that you will partner with. But in addition, your family plays a very important role. We have to really think about this, because here I am saying you have to decrease that. And what you are saying to me, Doc, what am I going to eat? Well, I have to eat. So here I have to be very realistic in saying to my patient, basically, what you are eating may contribute to this condition. And therefore, I would like you to see the nutritionist who will be able to design an eating plan or give you some instruction on balanced meal. We can do that. And obviously, a part of the whole equation too is to be active. Ability. If you can walk from Belmont to town, do it. You don't need to wait on the bus. That's a good exercise for the day. You will burn the calories and help, So do that. Do the walking. Prevent the congestion. You don't have to drive to work every day. There's too many cars in Grenada. I know the guys who sell cars will be upset with me, or even the government may, because they're not getting the tax that will help with the economy. But it's just
No, I actually there's the other side to that. It would help reduce on the
carbon emission,
the health bus, because that money can go into another area. But someone is asking here, Doc, I would like to ask the doctors if, as a diabetic, what we call club soda or soda water is good for us.
I will ask that individual, does club soda has any calories in it?
But club soda has sodium.
I don't. I'm giving that, right? That's one part of it, right? So you're not getting any calories in there, so therefore your beta cell will not be working to lower any carbs or any sugar. Now, it depends, as Dr. Nixon mentioned, it has sodium. High sodium increased blood pressure.
And water cheaper than club soda.
Some of us like our sparkling.
And seriously, I understand why the person asked that. Because club soda, actually, sometimes you really need a little tingle, especially if you stop drinking alcohol and beer. Nothing is wrong with that, but just remember that there is sodium included. But doctor, I wasn't finished with your question, with your answer, because I think we have to remind our population. Everybody, those who are not yet diabetics, those who already have diabetes, about the collaborating with the patient, with the diabetes educator one, because a lot of people are not aware of it. And the other institutions like the chronic disease self-management program, which is available at a level of primary care, right, which gives people severe and very important capacity to manage themselves, that empowerment that we all require. Because I will see you today, and then I probably won't see you for the next 3 months. But I can sit with my teamsters in that chronic disease self-management teaches you how to make decisions. So when you wake up in the morning and your fasting sugar is 300, you say, okay, it makes you say, okay, why have a 300 fasting sugar when I thought I was under control? My A1C has been 6. Why am I having? Oh, shoot. I went out last night and I had 3 drinks. So you start thinking critically. You decide, well, okay, I'm getting my sugar down, so today I'll have vegetables and a little meat, right? And at the end of the day, it comes back down. You check it 2 hours and they're coming down. Tomorrow morning, your fasting should be down. That kind of empowerment mechanism is what we require. The other thing is, a lot of us think that when it comes to eye care, going to the glasses store. Glasses store people want to sell glasses. Remember that. Glasses store people don't necessarily make a good evaluation. They see the front of your eyes and not the back of your eyes where the problem is. So I want people, yes, you may need glasses, but you don't buy a pair of glasses unless your sugar gets under control. Because
and that's a very important point. When sugar is high, your focus changes. You may be very blurry. Please don't get any glasses at that time. And even when it starts improving, the vision changes again.
Changes back.
You need a stability of blood sugars before you see the ophthalmologist.
And the other point I wanted to make, the importance of seeing your dentist. Because remember, small vessel change, if you don't control your sugar, you're going to lose your teeth. So you need to see a dentist.
But not only that, within the gum disease, many folks may present with gum disease, and that could be a sign of diabetes itself. So the gingivitis, etc., and whenever you brush,
and the fact that those diseases can actually further affect your heart and your kidneys. So we have to think about all of those. If you already have those organs compromised in any way because they're sick on their own, in fact, when bacteria enters through the gums, you can have further complications to your kidney and your heart disease. So,
Dr. Nixon, you mentioned something, and I don't want this point to miss us, especially to my diabetic patients out there. 40% of type 2 diabetic patients will develop chronic kidney disease. I emphasize that, and it's very important because of dialysis within our country. So all diabetic patients every year should have a urine albumin creatinine ratio. That's a urine test where we look at your creatinine, which is a function of kidney, etc., evaluation of kidney, and you get a value. And that value will let us know of your progression of kidney disease. Yes. And in addition to that, I'm very pleased because I was highlighting this point to all my diabetic patients I saw this year in Grenada. The EGFR, that basically tells us the filtration rate of the kidney. And that itself is so important to help establish chronic kidney disease. The urine albumin creatinine ratio and the EGFR. These are abbreviations that needs, and so once you get those values, discuss it with your physician, and that will let you know what stage you are in the chronic kidney disease and what you can do in terms of improving blood pressure, improving blood sugar to help decrease the progression of this condition.
Okay, wonderful. So folks, the number 435-2041. If you have any questions, we can take them now. The number again, 435-2041. Give us a call, or if you would like to share anything with us, we'll be more than happy to accommodate you. All right, so the number 435-2041. So, Doc, just to continue while we wait, actually someone was asking, we recall earlier someone asked about the itchy eyes, and they were saying, what if the itching is to the corner of the eyes? But before we take that, let's go to the telephone. We have a caller on the line. Doctor and call, good evening. Hello?
Yes, good night.
Yes, good evening, caller.
Yes. My question is, if you're pre-diabetic and you should take a statin drug, is you destined to get diabetes? Because statin drug never get rid of diabetes.
Can you repeat that again, please, sir?
If you're pre-diabetic and you've been given what they call a statin drug,
a statin?
Yes, you've been given drugs for pre-diabetes. Would you still destined to have diabetes?
Mm-hmm. Okay, caller, thank you. We got it. So he's asking if you're pre-diabetic and you're given a drug to at that stage for the pre-diabetes, are you still destined to become diabetic?
Good question.
Well, very good question. Very good. Pre-diabetes, I'm sure because of the family history and what his clinician observed with the patient, the clinician says, all right, let's start on this drug while you're on a go lifestyle changes. We'll monitor and see how things goes before you become overtly diabetic. So here again, this individual will go through lifestyle changes, and once he makes lifestyle changes, he's going to complain of blood sugars dropping. His sugars are getting lower, and his physician may say, all right, it's time for us to stop and observe and see how, or decrease the dose, and he may eventually get off the medication. So yes, these are the patients in the early phase of diabetes that I will say, all right, lifestyle change is important. But if there is family history, strong family history, of diabetes and its complication, I may be tempted to give those individuals metformin or whatever to help lower their blood sugars. Case in point, a young lady who had diabetes in pregnancy, she delivers and her blood sugars improve. I will leave her on a medication to prevent the progression of diabetes because her risk is very high of becoming diabetic in 5-10 years' time.
Okay, wonderful.
So I think that's a very important question, and I'll tell you why for me it's important. It's important because often our patients think that once they're on medicine, your medicine's supposed to control your sugar. They don't see it as an additive, as an adjunct to lifestyle changes. And maybe it's our fault that we really don't tell the patient that, right? Maybe we as clinicians and people who offer care forget to make that point. I am giving you this to help, but your nutrition pattern, the alcohol consumption, those things that you put in your mouth that are going to create sugar or make you have sugar in your bloodstream, you have to deal with them first, because that comes from outside of you. Okay, we forget because a lot of patients say, well, I'm taking my medications, why is my sugar high? Our sugar is high because we're not taking the whole gamut of activities into consideration and doing what needs to be done. We're not eating properly. Listen to me, everybody like oil lung in Grenada. Some people think they have to eat a pot by themselves. Simple thing as that. And when you tell people what they should eat for the carbohydrate, their sugar and starch consumption, they think you're crazy, right? But I take the medications, and that is not necessarily so. So I'm glad this gentleman called, because the medications are additives. They should not be the first and only line to managing your diabetes.
Right, wonderful. So, Doc, my final question to you has to do with the issue of climate change. I like to think of myself as a convert when it comes to climate change. And I just want to share a bit of information here from the National Library of Medicine. And it says diabetes and climate change are interconnected. Extreme weather events and rising temperatures may increase morbidity and mortality in patients living with diabetes, especially in those with cardiovascular complications. Failure to mitigate climate change and the diabetes epidemic threaten the lives of many people. I would like to get your comments on this.
Okay. Now, climate change, change in temperature. What does hot weather causes? Dehydration, volume depletion. And that itself is very important in terms of diabetes, because dehydration is not a good thing in diabetic patients. Sugars are very high, you can worsen the kidney function, etc. And losing volume is serious in the heat periods, as many of you have experienced over the summer. How Grenada was very hot. That itself, as a diabetic individual, not being hydrated, sugars will be high. Not being hydrated, kidney function, not being hydrated, cardiac output. All these things are infected in climate change. What about individuals who are dependent on insulin and they have to store their insulin? Insulin has to be in a cool environment. diabetic patients not having access to electricity, to the refrigerator, to do things, create problems itself. So those are just two examples of what climate change can affect in our patients. Dr. Nixon.
So climate change also, remember, it's a long thing, and it comes, we've been told in the Caribbean, for example, that we'd have less hurricanes, but we'd have much more severe hurricanes. It means that bridge gone, riverbank gone, you can't access medications.
Exactly. Yes.
Listen to me. Didn't I tell you at the beginning that this man said today he couldn't find his medication, he couldn't find vegetables? Where do I find the vegetables? It is not available. So availability of good foods. And what's going to happen? We're going to have an onslaught of highly processed foods that are not good for us. Flour, crackers, fruit, sugar-sweetened beverages that are bottled or concentrated. All of those things are what are going to be made for relief. It therefore means that if we have, as long as climate change, we don't mitigate the whole issue of climate change in our environment, it therefore means that we don't recognize and don't accept that climate change is a problem. And then we don't remember that climate change is not just for us. America won't have corn to make flour. They won't have wheat to make flour. Look at what happened in Ukraine and the war. So that as well, okay? Climate, when changes occur that interrupt the supply chains of the foods that we buy, we're going to have challenges. So we have to think about it now. And that's why prevention, Dr. Matthias, is so very important. Early prevention of diabetes, lifestyle, like you said, you're at greater risk if you've had gestational diabetes, if you have families with diabetes, family members, and watch that it was on two sides. I tell my patients, if your mother has diabetes and your dad have diabetes, you have a 75% chance of developing diabetes. But you also have a 25% chance of not developing diabetes. Take the gamble. Do what you must and embrace that 25% chance and beat the odds, right? Be aware that climate change is a challenge. Guess what? We need to have water storage. We need to have a lot of stuff that is going to make us have at least have water. So you can water a local vegetable garden and other things that are necessary. We can avoid dehydration. And we need to start practicing behaviors from now that when we have those extreme changes, we're already so converted into a simple, healthy lifestyle that we're not going to adulterate our lifestyle because you're accustomed to the simple, healthy ways of living. So we have to think about what are the factors that we need to put in place to mitigate the challenges of climate change. But I need to ask Dr. Matthias one more question. Especially for a younger population, and we kind of spoke about this the other day and today. Technology and managing diabetes, because I think it's so important. I know you've brought some new modalities for how I check on my diabetes, how my insulin is delivered, and all the rest. And I think even our most senior population, or people who have had diabetes for a longer time, need to embrace how technology can make it more simple for us and more private, often more very personal. And how I can be empowered by what the new technology offers. So give us a little bit of juice without sugar about.
Well, technology has allowed us to do more precision medicine, and it's an awesome area to be in managing diabetic patients. To say that within our island, there are many folks, at least, that I help manage using technology. In other words, they are in Grenada, I am here, and I can look at my computer and see what their sugars are at this moment. That's how technology is helping us manage our patients. There are patients on the island who has insulin pump. They are type 1 diabetics. Their beta cells are non-functioning, and they were able to get these devices that will deliver insulin to them. And I should say this, they are on the most recent, markedly improved, advanced insulin pump. And these insulin pumps that the patients on the island have is basically, you just eat and the pump will give you insulin and knows when to shut off, etc. And they are doing great. I have looked at their blood glucose readings. So saying that, there is also a continuous glucose monitoring device. So let's say you prick your finger for a blood sugar. The question is, that blood sugar was at that time. Is the sugar going up? Is it going down? Or is it the same? We don't know.
Yeah.
So with the continuous glucose monitoring, you will be able to trend that blood glucose in real time. So you will understand that if you eat that oil dump, how high will that sugar go and how long it will stay up there. So there are devices to help us manage our intake and to help improve our diabetes. And in addition to that, the technology, patients may be in Grenville and you are in St. George's as a physician, and you can sit in your office and you can get data. What percentage of the time was the patient in targeted range? What percentage were they above the range, or are those patients having low blood sugars? So you can make decisions, look at that data. They do not have to come to your office. You can do it afar to help control their blood sugars, etc., etc. So the technology is really helping us in terms of the delivery of insulin and the monitoring of insulin. And I should also mention again that not only the technology is helping us, but the nuance of drugs or medication out there that we can target. Let's say, for example, a patient has heart disease and diabetes. There are some diabetic medications out there that will decrease the incidence of having another event or preventing the progression of kidney disease, etc., that patients may target to us. In addition, patient is BMI, body mass index, or they're overweight. You have specific diabetic medication you can treat those patients with, etc., etc. So diabetes management, the precision of medicine, is very exciting now. And I know my mission is that on our island, we'll be able to get access to all that, not limited. And by empowering our patients to demand it, empowering our physicians of the new advances in diabetes, we surely will get there. I have no qualms for it.
And we have indeed come a long way from cleaning test tablets and waiting on the lab to give us a blood sugar.
Yes.
I think all of us can use a very basic and efficient method of monitoring our sugars by simply using our blood glucose monitors.
Yes.
You're a member of the Diabetes Association, and immediately you can sign up and get your blood glucose monitor. We're gonna all have to come to that point where we can stick ourselves until we could have continuing blood monitoring. The technology is, if you can afford it, you can get it. It's not cheap, but it's worth it for those who do not want the headache and who can afford it. The bottom line is that we still have, and that's technology, because you can take your sugars, store the numbers in your machine, and make a graph and send off to you and email it off to your physician. So there is a lot of technology that facilitates. Information is truly available through AI, and we're going to have to learn to find things, get onto the internet, and again, my favorite instrument. Right?
Well, I will even say to you, oftentimes here, patients get the information before I do. You get blood tests drawn, the information is sent to patient and physician.
Yes.
And patient will call my office within an hour or two. Doc, this is high. Doc, this is low. And I have to reassure them, please wait until the clinic visit before we can do things. So, it's where we are today, and technology, the Pandora box is open. We cannot shut it. But it's just being more efficient and to deliver more effective care.
So in the age of AI, when people would really when bad people put bad information, we need to get accustomed to understanding the origin of good information. Most of us have a smartphone. We need to find the sites that are safe, the sites that give us real information. From now, start learning. Go on and get information. It's all there.
Mm-hmm.
No, you can't manage your diabetes on your own. We haven't reached that yet. But no, we can't. People think, I can just go. No, you can't.
You can.
Right? Because the critical thinking part of it and the knowledge-based management and evidence-based control and management of diabetes is what your doctor might have a little ahead of you, right? It would be good if you have a lot of information because it makes it simpler for your doctor to give you the support that you require. But start checking your sugar, get accustomed to being the daily monitor or the 3 times a week monitor of your sugar.
Right. So we have one final question on the WhatsApp platform. Someone is asking, good night, could persons with type 2 diabetes use the glucose monitor? Doc?
Yes, they can use the glucose monitor. Yes.
Please use your glucose monitor. I beg you do. I personally advise my patients who already established diabetes, check your morning sugar, but start using those 2-hour sugars. The sugar you have 2 hours after you've had a meal, because that is what is reflected in your A1C. The sugar that you find, you go home in the evening, you have a meal, you sit down and watch the news, or you're watching your TikTok videos, or you're learning something off the internet 2 hours after you've had a meal. You can't go and run after the dog and say, I forgot to feed the fowl and all of that. And, rain falling, let me just scrub the yard quickly. No. You must be comfortable and rest, and you could go on the internet and sit down and stuff. And then 2 hours after you've consumed your meal, you check your sugar and you store the data. Right. I advise my patients who write it down to write what you have eaten, because that also makes you know why my sugar is so high. Like one of my patients recently came and said, "Dan, white bread. Love bread, had 2 slices in the night and 2 in the morning, and her sugar went up from 95 as a fasting sugar to 187. She nearly dead." But so she knows white bread. She said, "I don't know, I'm done." But that's empowerment, because you, at the end of the day, while our patients get support from their clinicians and whoever else, the nurses in the clinic, at the end of the day, you're the boss of this thing.
Right, lovely. So, that's all the time we have, Doc. We have to wrap it here. It's almost 10. So I'll give you a minute to make any closing remarks, parting statements.
Well, I want to thank the host tonight and also Dr. Nixon for the challenging questions, and also those who submitted questions both on the different platforms. But the bottom line is that diabetes is a progressive disease, and we can prevent that progression from worsening by early intervention and recognition. And that can be done through platforms like this, and which I encourage everyone to talk about, question in regards to diabetes and its care. Our objectives is to prevent the complication. It's very costly, and we can use our present treatment regimen and technology to help improve this condition. And finally, I should say that within the next year, we'll be having 1 shot of insulin that lasts for a week. Just imagine. Insulin is now designed to be personalized to an individual. That's what the technology.
Fantastic. Dr. Nixon, your final thought. Mm-hmm.
Dr. Matthias, I always like to have interaction with you. I thank you, and I want to remind people in Grenada that this is a GBSS boy, okay? He have nice accent, but he come from down by the beach. I thank you for coming every year and twice a year and giving your service, especially like this, sharing your knowledge, because we have to empower the people in Grenada. I want to remind everybody in Grenada that because 13% of us already know that we're diabetic, and the truth is probably more of us don't know, that everybody should try and screen on your birthday. Like when you do your pap smear and your prostate exam, and want to check your sugar and your pressure and stuff, just do it. Make sure you're not, okay? Always screen to make sure it's not there. Godfrey, thanks for hosting the people of Grenada through the Diabetes Association for this month. We've imparted a lot of knowledge. So everybody knows what my mantra is. Learn something and put it into your life.
Yes,
okay? Mm-hmm. We hope to see a decrease in complications of diabetes. Maybe next year we'll see a lot more people with diabetes because people have been checking, but we're working on the complications. We're going to live well.
Right.
So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Matthias. Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
No sorrow with the rum, okay?
Thank you.
I got to put a little in there.
Yeah,
right?
thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Matthias, again for accepting our invitation. It's always a pleasure, and we look forward to hosting you again, of course, once it's convenient. Doc, thank you so much for always being here, and be sure to join us next Tuesday for another edition of Doctor and Call. Just a reminder, tomorrow evening, episode 10 of Our Climate Reality, we'll be looking at agricultural interventions from the Ministry of Agriculture and SIEP. So be sure to join us for that. That's at 8:30 tomorrow evening. Thank you very much once again, and do have a good night. All the best.